Hey folks, this is Tennessee State Senator Bo Watson. Do you ever feel like state politics are hard to follow? Do you wish you could hear directly from the people making the decisions? Do you really know what your elected officials are doing, the policies they're pushing, and how those choices impact your community and your daily life? Tennessee Today is a podcast where I share an inside look at state government, what's happening, why it matters, how it affects you in your daily life. No political spin here, no confusing jargon, just real discussions about the issues shaping our state. Hello, I'm Tennessee State Senator Bo Watson. I want to welcome you to Tennessee Today, which is a podcast that I'm beginning to discuss all things Tennessee in the political world, as well as in Tennessee government. I decided to do this podcast because most people know about or talk about or hear about the federal government, and most people will talk about or hear about their local government. But sandwiched in between those two governments is probably the most important government, and that's your state government. I serve in the Tennessee State Senate. I've been there for about 20 years. I also spent 2 years in the House of Representatives. And I've learned over that time that most of the things that get done in and across the state of Tennessee are a result of action that has been taken by the Tennessee state government. And yet, knowing that, I also realize that most people really don't have an understanding of how state government operates, and particularly how it impacts on their daily lives, even though my experience has told me that it impacts more on their daily lives than either the federal government or local government combined. So this podcast is designed to bring you information about state government, what's happening in state government, how it relates to the federal government, how it relates back to your local government, and most importantly, how you can get engaged and involved in the process. Because our system of government in America depends upon a well-educated and well-informed electorate. That is, the people who vote and participate in our system. So sit back, put on your seatbelts, and get ready for what I think will be a really fun and exciting podcast. Now, since this is my first episode of my podcast, I probably owe the listeners a little bit of an explanation of who I am and how I got to where I am. I was born and raised in Hamilton County, born in the North Chattanooga area, actually on Graham Street for the folks who are listening that live in the North Chattanooga area. But when I was really young, we moved to Hickson. Now, I have 3 older sisters. I actually have 4 older sisters, but my oldest sister, Anna, passed away a few years ago. But we moved from North Chattanooga to Hickson in the early 1960s. Hickson was then in the county, and it was just really beginning to develop, and my father wanted to move out into the county. But the interesting thing was, even though we lived in the county, my father insisted that we attend city schools. Back then, there was a county school system and a city school system, and my father thought, since he had gone through the city school system, that all of his children needed to go through the city school system as well. So my dad actually paid tuition so that I could go to Normal Park Elementary School. Now, back then, Normal Park Elementary School was just your standard kindergarten through 6th grade elementary school. My parents had gone to Normal Park. All my sisters had gone to Normal Park. All my sisters are older than me, so I have been the blessed baby boy of the family. But all my sisters went to Normal Park. Parents went to Normal Park. So, of course, I went to Normal Park and had a fantastic experience there. Both my grandparents lived in North Chattanooga, so while the family, we lived in Hickson, we traveled into North Chattanooga every day because Dad worked at Provident. And I would go to my grandparents' house and sometimes walk to school, and then after school, walk back to my grandparents' house. So I essentially grew up in the North Chattanooga area. At some point along the way, my father and mother decided that rather than going to Northside Junior High like all my other siblings, they sent me to Baylor, and I spent the 7th through 12th grade at the Baylor School over on the river. Now, back then, Baylor wasn't a co-ed school. It was a single-sex male school, and I went to Baylor, had an incredible experience there, very involved in the athletic program over there. I was a football player, and I wrestled and ran track and was really, really involved in the school, and actually, to this day, remain as an alumnus really involved in the school. After attending Baylor, all of my family has gone to either the University of Chattanooga or the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. So I spent a one-year stint at the University of the South at Swanee, but really it didn't fit into the way I was, I guess, that point in my life. So I ended up transferring from Swanee back to UT Chattanooga. Attended UT Chattanooga, graduated with a degree in biology, enjoyed my experience there. I've been a loyal Mock fan and a loyal Mock my entire life. And once I graduated there, then I went to physical therapy school at the University of Tennessee at Memphis. And I've been a practicing physical therapist for over 40 years now in the Hamilton County area. None of that led me into the political world that I now live in. But it was a good preparation for the world of politics that I would, at some day later in my life, enter into. After coming back to Chattanooga and working at Erlanger Medical Center in the outpatient physical therapy program, I took a brief hiatus and moved to Kingsport, Tennessee. And I lived in Kingsport, Tennessee for almost 10 years. I worked at hospital there, Holston Valley Hospital and Medical Center. Have a lot of great friends still up in the Kingsport area, and a lot of physical therapy connections, and now a lot of political connections in that space. My wife and I, we moved back. I have one son, Gray, who is now 38 years old. He'll be 39 in April. We moved back to Chattanooga in about 1997, and I started working at Park Ridge Medical Center, where I've been ever since. So I think I'm in my 28th year now at Park Ridge, where for the most of that career I spent as a director and as a clinician taking care of patients, mostly in the outpatient realm, mostly around athletic activities or really active individuals. I would be considered an orthopedic type therapist that deals with mostly musculoskeletal problems. A lot of people often wonder, how does someone who is trained in the human sciences, practices as a clinician, get into the political world? Because science is based on logic and reason, and oftentimes politics is not based on logic and reason. Matter of fact, sometimes political decisions are made and people who are logical or reasonable thinkers can't understand why the decision was made. And hopefully on this podcast, we'll be able to explain why some of those decisions are made the way that they are. But actually working in healthcare, particularly working for a large institution like Park Ridge Medical Center, which is part of the HCA family of hospitals, you learn a lot about relationships that you develop with people, which is critically important in the political world. You also learn a lot about how bureaucracy works, or in some instances doesn't work, and it helps train you in the patience of working through the bureaucracy, especially when you're trying to effectuate change. In a system like Park Ridge, you also learn how measurement of things makes a difference in determining whether something is being effective or not effective, efficient or not efficient. So the healthcare world actually is a great training ground for someone who gets involved in government or gets involved in the political system, because both systems are incredibly complex. Both systems have multiple problems that have multiple sub-problems underneath the main problem. For example, if you think of a patient, any patient that you see in the hospital as a therapist, it's rare that they come in, they just have one single disorder. They may have one primary disorder, but there are a lot of other disorders that act into that. A clinician or a therapist has to decide, which disorder do I address first and which disorder do I address, which may have the greatest impact on all the other disorders. Government works the same way. Our system is full of all kinds of different problems. We try to identify the problems that are most important and try and identify the solutions to those problems which will have the greatest impact not only on that problem, but on all the other problems that are related to that key issue. So again, healthcare and taking care of patients really is a great training ground for someone who's interested in government or in the political system. People often wonder how a person who is trained in the health sciences or is trained as a clinician gets into the political world because they seem to be so different from each other, even though, as we've talked about, there are actually a lot of common similarities between the two. My first experience with, besides, running for student government in high school and that kind of thing, now that I think about it, I was also the president of my physical therapy class. So maybe my experience in the political world goes back further than I initially thought. But my real first experience in politics, so to speak, I was the PTA president of my son's elementary school at Lincoln Elementary School in Kingsport, Tennessee. And you very quickly realize that the politics of the PTA can be as rough and tumble as any political system that one might be in. Parents are very passionate about their child's success. They're very passionate that their child's needs are met. And that's true in government or in the political system. People get very passionate about the issues that are important to them. So it was really a great training ground to work within the PTA, Parent-Teacher Association. For those, I think actually in the modern world, they've kind of changed the name. I'm not sure they call it Parent-Teacher Associations anymore. But anyway, it was a great way to learn about how developing relationships with people that you really don't know and their concerns about problems that we had at the school, how you use those relationships to help solve those problems. I spent most of my time, though, really just being a clinician and working hard like most people do, earning a living, providing for my family, making sure that my son was getting the best education that we could provide for him. But somewhere along the way, I got a side interest in politics, probably more about government. And when I was in the 8th grade, back in those days, we took civics in the 8th grade. And my civics teacher, and here's a shout out to Coach Bill McMahon, who some folks who watch this or listen to this podcast might know. But Coach McMahon was my 8th grade civics teacher, and I got really interested in how government was structured. I didn't pay that much attention to the politics of it. I was just really curious at the structure of government and why was our government structured the way it was and who were those people that were responsible for it. And my dad was a big history nut, and my sister has her master's in history. And so I guess that kind of was the fertile ground for me to get into looking at how government works. And then over time, I developed a side interest. While I was working in the clinic and taking care of patients, we would often have talk radio in the background because most patients anyway, really enjoyed listening to the talk radio back then. And that would lead to some kind of conversation. One of the things that clinicians have to do, and political people learn this as well, but clinicians have to learn how the best way is to connect with their patient. Sometimes it's around art. Sometimes it's around car mechanics or construction or travel or a favorite TV show, or sometimes it's politics. But clinicians are constantly looking at ways that they can connect with the patient that they're treating. So you become a conversationist in a lot of different spaces. In the political world or in government leadership, you have to do the same thing. You have to be able to connect in with people where they are. Not everyone is interested in sports. A lot of people are more interested in art. Not everyone is interested in art. A lot of people are interested in agriculture or farming. So you have to really have a broad base of information and understanding to connect with people. And politically, that's critically important. So again, as I've talked about throughout this episode, the relationship between a clinician in the healthcare world and a political person in the government world really aren't that far apart. So somewhere along the way, the political bug bit me, and I got really more and more interested in not only how government operated, but how the politics of government operated. I, like many people, would sit around with my friends and talk about if I was in office, I'd do this, that, or the other. Never really thinking that might happen until one day, a gentleman, Representative Jim Vincent, who now is the county executive for Ray County. He retired from the Tennessee House of Representatives, and one of my buddies called me on the phone. I was driving into the hospital for work, called me on the phone and said, well, and this is what people often say to us in the political world, it's always we need to run for this House seat. Well, I had no political connections. He had no political connections, but we decided it would be a fun experience, never expecting to win. Now, again, I had grown up in the area that the House District 31 would represent. I have a large family, so I knew a lot of people, but we aren't a politically connected family. So I didn't know all of the things that would be required for us to be successful. We went around the county and met with the important people, or who we thought were the important people that we needed to make sure we talked to before we really got into the race. But at the end of the day, we actually put together a really shockingly, a really good campaign. It was an 8-person Republican primary. Oh, for you may not know, I'm a Republican. It was a 8-person Republican primary with a couple of people in there that were really pretty well connected, but somehow we ran a really, really good campaign, and we ended up winning the primary by about 90 votes, and then we went on to win the general election, and that led me to the Tennessee House of Representatives, into the House chamber, which I had never walked into before until the day I was sworn into office, which was really cool. But it just goes to show you there are a lot of ways and different paths. Not everybody who gets into the political world got there by being a political operative or working for some campaign or working for some elected person or being in a political family. People come to the political process in all different kinds of ways, and that's what makes it most interesting, and that's what will make this podcast so interesting to you. So you're asking yourself, I hope, why the podcast? Well, the purpose of this podcast is to give you clear, accessible insights into Tennessee state government, as well as the behind-the-scenes politics that make Tennessee state government operate. Government does not operate, cannot operate in a vacuum without the political background. I once had a person come to my Senate office. I was elected to the Senate in 2006. So I was elected to the House in 2004 and then elected to the Senate in 2006. I once had a person come into my office to talk about an issue. Now, just so you know, I'm chairman of the Senate Finance, Ways and Means Committee, which means a lot of people come into my office, and they all come because they want something. Because when you're chairman of finance, they figure you are the best access to taxpayers' money. So I have a lot of people coming to visit with me. But anyway, several years ago, I had a person come into my office, and they began the conversation with, gosh, everything up here is so political. And I thought for a minute, and I thought, well, yeah, everything is political. This is a political process. This is a political system. And whether we like it or not, that's how you get things done, is understanding the politics, which is often the background of an issue. Many times people see an issue and they wonder either how it got important or why it's not important. And it's usually related to the politics around the issue. Now, some people can look at politics in a negative view. I look at it as a very positive view in that the politics of something is really just the background or the history of it, the how do you get it accomplished process. And in our system of government, politics plays a key role in getting anything done, whether at the state level, the local level, or the federal level. So hopefully, listening to this podcast, you will learn some insights about the political system so that you can better navigate the political system, so you can help us make Tennessee the best state. Well, of course, I believe it already is, but an even better state amongst the 50 states that make up the fantastic and great United States of America. So I hope you will choose to listen to this podcast. I think you will find it, hopefully, entertaining, but more importantly, I hope you will find it informative, and it will make you more engaged in our state's political process. There are many issues to be addressed across the state of Tennessee, and we won't solve them all on a podcast like this, but working together, perhaps we can solve a few of them. And I look forward to hearing back from you. I hope you will participate in this dialogue with me. You can email me your questions at info, that's I-N-F-O, at botn.com. That's the Southern Bow, BOTN.com. I will answer your questions to the best of my ability. Sometimes you'll like my answers. Sometimes you won't. And that's all part of the political process. So tune in and let's take this ride together. I'm Tennessee State Senator Bo Watson.